The wolf was going to die. Elara knew at the moment she saw him, massive, black as a moonless night, collapsed in the snow with 9 others scattered around him like fallen soldiers. Blood matted their fur. Their breathing came shallow and labored, puffs of white mist that grew weaker by the second. She'd been walking back from the trading post 3 miles east, her pack heavy with dried herbs and the last of her silver coins converted into supplies she'd need to survive another month in the Deadlands. The storm had come out of nowhere, a screaming wall of white that turned the world into a frozen hell. She'd almost walked right past them. Would have, if she hadn't tripped over a gray wolf's outstretched paw and gone sprawling into the snow. Now she knelt in the howling wind, her fingers already numb as she pushed the fur back from the gray wolf's neck and saw what she'd feared. Black veins. Spreading beneath the skin like dark rivers, branching out from a wound on his flank. Wolfsbane poisoning. Someone had coated their weapons with it, someone who wanted these wolves dead and was willing to use the cruelest method possible to ensure it. Wolfsbane didn't just kill. It burned. It spread through the bloodstream like liquid fire, shutting down organs one by one while the victims stayed conscious enough to feel every moment of their own death. Damn it. Elara looked at the others. 10 wolves total. All massive. All dying. The smart thing to do would be to walk away. She'd learned that lesson in her 5 years alone in the Deadlands. Don't get involved. Don't draw attention. Don't invite trouble into the small, safe life you've carved out of nothing. These wolves could be anyone. Rogues who'd raped and murdered their way across the territories. Criminals fleeing pack justice. Enemies who'd slit her throat the moment they woke up. She should walk away. The black wolf made a sound, something between a whimper and a growl, and Elara watched his massive body shudder with pain. Damn it, she said again. She couldn't do it. Couldn't leave them here to die in agony while the snow buried them alive. Whatever they'd done, whatever they were, they didn't deserve this. Nothing deserved this. Elara shrugged off her pack and started calculating. Her cabin was maybe 200 yards north. She had enough anti-wolfsbane tonic for maybe 3 wolves, if she stretched it. She'd spent 3 years perfecting that formula, testing it on herself when she'd accidentally gotten scratched by a wolfsbane-coated trap. 3 wolves. There were 10. Figure it out, she muttered to herself. You always figure it out. She grabbed the smallest wolf first, a tawny brown male who couldn't weigh more than 150 pounds. Still, dragging him through the deepening snow while the wind tried to knock her sideways was like hauling a sack of rocks uphill. By the time she got him to the cabin and pulled him inside, her arms were screaming. 9 more. Back into the storm. The next wolf was larger. Female, she thought, with silver-gray fur now stained crimson. The black veins had spread further on this one, she might already be too far gone. Elara dragged her anyway. The hours blurred together. Storm and snow and the endless, brutal work of saving lives that probably couldn't be saved. Her muscles burned, then went numb, then burned again. She fell twice, 3 times, lost count. Her coat was soaked through, and she'd stopped shivering somewhere around wolf number 6. That was bad. She knew it was bad. Hypothermia crept up quiet and gentle, making you feel warm and sleepy right before it killed you. She kept moving. Wolf number 8. Number 9. The black wolf was last. He was also the biggest, easily 250 pounds of solid muscle, even half dead. Elara tried to lift him and couldn't. Tried to drag him and barely moved him 3 feet before her legs gave out. She sat in the snow beside him, breathing hard, and looked at his face. A scar ran across his muzzle, pale against the dark fur. Old wound. He'd survived something terrible before. You're going to survive this too, she told him. I didn't haul your pack all the way to my cabin just to let you die in my front yard. He didn't respond. His breathing was getting shallower. Elara got up. Grabbed his front legs. Started pulling. She'd never worked so hard for anything in her life. Every foot felt like a mile. The snow grabbed at her, like it wanted to keep them both. The wind screamed that she was stupid, that she should give up, that she was going to die out here for a bunch of strangers who'd probably kill her if they woke up. She kept pulling. The cabin door had never looked so beautiful. She somehow got the black wolf over the threshold, slammed the door against the storm, and collapsed on the floor beside him. 10 wolves. Her small cabin was crammed full of them, barely room to move between their bodies. The fire had died to embers while she'd been gone. The cold was seeping through the walls. Don't you dare die yet. Elara forced herself up. Built the fire back to a roar. Put water on to boil. Then she went to her storage shelf and took down the bottles she'd sworn she'd never use except for herself. 3 years of work. 3 years of careful harvesting and precise measurements and failed batches that had nearly killed her. She had 12 doses of anti-wolfsbane tonic, and 10 wolves who needed it. The math didn't work. It never worked. She started with the black wolf. She didn't question why. Later, when she had time to think, she'd tell herself it was because he was the worst off. The black veins had spread across half his body, and his heartbeat was barely there when she pressed her ear to his chest. But that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was that something inside her had looked at him lying in the snow, dying, and had screamed no so loudly it had drowned out everything else. Like her soul recognized him somehow. Ridiculous. She didn't have a wolf. She couldn't recognize anyone. Elara pried his jaws open and poured the tonic down his throat. Then she moved to the silver female. Then the tawny male. Wolf after wolf, working by firelight, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. The math still didn't work. 12 doses for 10 wolves meant she could only give each one a little more than a single dose. It might not be enough. It probably wasn't enough. She gave them everything she had anyway. Dawn was creeping gray through the frost-covered windows when she finished. The storm had died to a whisper. The fire crackled. 10 wolves lay around her small cabin, breathing. Still breathing. Elara allowed herself a moment of something like hope. Then she checked the black wolf again, pulled back his lip to look at his gums, pressed her fingers to the pulse point on his neck, watched the movement of his chest. The black veins had stopped spreading. His heartbeat was stronger. He might actually make it. His eyes opened. Elara froze, her hand still on his neck. His eyes were silver, pure molten silver, like moonlight given form. They fixed on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something ancient in those eyes. Something powerful. Something that looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. She felt something crack open in her chest. A sensation she'd never experienced before, a kind of warmth, a pull, a recognition that echoed the irrational certainty she'd felt in the snow. Like her heart was reaching for him. But that was impossible. She was wolfless. She'd been declared defective at her first shift ceremony, when the wolf that should have emerged simply hadn't. You couldn't feel the bond without a wolf. Everyone knew that. His mouth moved. He was trying to say something. Don't try to talk, Elara said, her voice coming out strange and rough. You're safe. You're going to be okay. Just rest. His eyes searched her face for another moment, that silver gaze seeing something she couldn't understand, and then they closed. His breathing evened out into real sleep. Elara sat back on her heels, her heart pounding. It was nothing, she told herself. Just a trick of the light. Just exhaustion making you see things. She said it 3 times, like a spell that could make it true. The fire popped and settled. The wolves slept. Outside, the wind whispered against the cabin walls, and the new day crept across the snow. Elara was so tired. More tired than she'd ever been. She'd think about what came next later, figure out what to do when they woke up, how to explain herself, how to get them out of her cabin and her life. Later. She curled up on the small patch of floor beside the fire, between the black wolf and the tawny male, and let her eyes close. She was asleep in seconds. She didn't see the smallest wolf, a lean brown male she'd barely looked at twice, begin to shift. Didn't hear the soft crack of bones reshaping, the whisper of fur becoming skin. The young man who emerged was naked and shaking, but his eyes were clear. He looked around the cramped cabin at his fallen brothers. At the empty bottles by the fire. At the human woman sleeping in their midst, her face peaceful, her hands still stained with the tonic she'd used to save them. Then he looked at the black wolf, and his breath caught. The royal crest was hidden beneath fur, but he knew. They all knew. His gaze went back to the woman. The wolfless woman who'd touched their king without permission. Who'd put her hands on him, her mouth near his throat. Anyone else would be dead for that. The king's guard had killed for less. But she hadn't hurt him. She'd saved him. Finn's voice came out as a whisper, hoarse from the poison and the shift. She touched the king, he breathed, his eyes wide with something caught between fear and wonder. And lived. He looked at her for a long moment, this strange, impossible woman who dragged 10 dying wolves out of a blizzard and poured her life's work down their throats. Then he lay back down, shifted back to wolf form, and waited for his king to wake. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. Elara woke to the feeling of being watched. Not the casual glance of a passing stranger. This was the weight of predator eyes, multiple sets of them, fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle before she'd even opened her own. She kept her breathing steady. Kept her body loose and relaxed against the hard floor. 5 years in the Deadlands had taught her that much. Never show fear. Never show surprise. Assess the situation before you react, because reaction without information gets you killed. Slowly, she let her eyes drift open. 9 men stood in her cabin. They'd positioned themselves around the small space with military precision, 2 by the door, 2 by the single window, the others filling the gaps between. All of them were watching her with the same predatory stillness, the same coiled readiness that said they could move from standing to killing in the space between heartbeats. They were beautiful. Every single one of them, in that sharp-edged way that felt more dangerous than attractive. Scars marked their faces and bare arms, old wounds, battle wounds, the kind you earned by fighting and surviving things that should have killed you. Their eyes held the flat, assessing calm of men who'd seen death often enough that it no longer impressed them. Warriors. These weren't rogues or criminals. These were trained, disciplined soldiers. Which meant the wolves she'd saved last night were something far more complicated than she'd assumed. Elara sat up slowly, keeping her hands visible. The largest of the men, a mountain of muscle with a shaved head and a scar that bisected his left eyebrow, tracked her movement like a hawk watching a mouse. "She's awake," one of them said. Unnecessary, but it broke the silence. "I can see that." The big one. His voice was deep and cold, authority wrapped in every syllable. He stepped forward, and the others shifted almost imperceptibly to give him room. The leader, then. Or at least the one in charge while. The Black Wolf. Elara's eyes found him immediately. He was still on her bed, the only piece of real furniture in the cabin, still in wolf form, still unconscious. But his breathing was stronger now, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The black veins had faded to faint gray lines beneath his fur. He was going to live. The relief that washed through her was sharper than it should have been. She didn't know this wolf. Didn't owe him anything beyond basic decency. But something in her chest loosened at the sight of him breathing, and she couldn't explain why. "Who are you?" The big man's question snapped her attention back. He'd moved closer while she was distracted, close enough now that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. They were pale blue, like ice over deep water. "Elara." She kept her voice steady. "This is my cabin. My territory, as much as the Deadlands have territory." "Who are you?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that she'd dared to question him back. "Commander Declan." Beta of the, he stopped himself. What pack do you belong to? None. You're rogue? No. Elara stood up. She had to move carefully, her muscles screamed from last night's exertion, and she was fairly certain she'd pulled something in her back hauling these men through the snow. I'm banished. There's a difference. Declan's eyes narrowed. Banished from where? Does it matter? I'm here now. I've been here for 5 years. I don't belong to any pack, I don't answer to any alpha, and I didn't ask for 10 dying wolves to collapse in my front yard. She moved toward the small stove in the corner, putting distance between herself and Declan. The other men shifted to track her movement. I saved your lives because leaving you to die felt wrong. You're welcome to stay until you've recovered enough to travel. After that, I'd like you to leave. You don't give us orders. Declan's voice dropped to something dangerous. I'm not giving orders. I'm making a request. Elara filled the kettle and set it on the stove to boil. Her hands were steadier than her heartbeat. A polite one, considering I used 3 years of work to keep you all breathing. Silence stretched through the cabin. Elara could feel them exchanging glances behind her back, the wordless communication of men who'd fought together long enough to read each other's thoughts. You smell wrong. This from a different voice. She turned to find a lean, dark-haired man studying her with unsettling intensity. Finn, she recognized him as the tawny wolf she'd dragged in first. The smallest of the group. Excuse me? No wolf. He stepped closer, nostrils flaring. No pack mark. You smell like herbs and smoke and human, but there's nothing else. No trace of the beast. The others went still. Even Declan's cold expression flickered with something new. I told you, Elara said carefully. I'm banished. Banishment doesn't take your wolf. Declan again, his voice gone quiet in a way that felt more threatening than shouting. Even rogues carry the scent. What are you? The question hung in the air. Elara felt the weight of 9 sets of eyes pressing against her, demanding an answer she'd spent 5 years avoiding. She could lie. Make up some story about a curse or a ritual gone wrong. These men didn't know her, they'd have no way to verify whatever she told them. But she was tired. Tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of carrying the shame like a stone in her chest. I'm Wolfless. The words came out flat and hard. I was born to the Silver Creek Pack. When I turned 18 and went through my first shift ceremony, no wolf emerged. I stood there in front of everyone, my father, my pack, the elders, and nothing happened. I was declared defective and banished the same day. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. Elara watched their faces and saw the understanding dawn. The Wolfless weren't just rare, they were considered cursed. Abominations. Many traditional packs killed wolfless children at birth, considering it a mercy. The fact that she'd survived to adulthood, let alone lived alone in the Deadlands for 5 years, went against everything they'd been taught. Wolfless, Declan repeated, like he was testing the word. And yet you knew how to treat wolfsbane poisoning. You had anti-wolfsbane tonic, a remedy even our healers struggle to make. I had 3 years with nothing to do but experiment. Elara turned back to the kettle. You learn a lot when survival depends on it. You could have let us die. This from a red-haired warrior near the window. His voice held genuine confusion. Wolfless humans who help our kind, it doesn't happen. You had no reason to save us. I had every reason. Elara poured hot water over dried herbs, the familiar ritual steadying her nerves. I spent 18 years being told I was less than nothing because I was born without a wolf. I know what it feels like to be abandoned, written off, left to die. I won't do that to anyone else. Not even strangers. Not even. She stopped herself. Not even wolves who could kill me with a thought. A sound from the bed made everyone turn. The black wolf was stirring, his massive paws twitching, a low rumble building in his chest. Declan moved to his side immediately, dropping to one knee with a deference that made Elara's stomach clench. "My king." His voice had gone soft. Almost reverent. "Can you hear me? King." The word hit Elara like a physical blow. She stared at the black wolf, at the scar across his muzzle, at the sheer size of him, at the way 9 deadly warriors arranged themselves around him like planets orbiting a sun. "No." The word escaped her before she could stop it. "No, no, no." Finn was watching her with those 2 sharp eyes. "You didn't know?" "How would I know?" Elara set down her cup hard enough to slosh tea over the rim. "He was dying in the snow." He didn't exactly introduce himself. The royal crest. She'd heard stories, like everyone had, the Alpha King who ruled all 5 territories with iron authority and ruthless justice. Kael Nightborne. The Blood King. They said he'd killed more challengers than any ruler in 3 centuries. They said his wolf was death itself, black as sin and twice as deadly. They said anyone who touched him without permission didn't live long enough to regret it. Elara looked down at her hands. Hands that had pried open his jaws, poured medicine down his throat, pressed against his chest to feel his heartbeat. "I didn't know." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "You have to understand, I didn't know who he was. I was just trying to help. I wasn't trying to, if I'd known." "You would have let him die?" Declan rose smoothly, his expression unreadable. "Our king, bleeding in the snow, you would have walked away if you'd known who he was?" "No." The answer came immediately, surprising her. "No, I would have done exactly what I did. But I would have been more afraid while doing it." Something that might have been respect flickered in Declan's pale eyes. "He needs to leave," Elara said. "All of you need to leave. As soon as he's stable enough to travel, you need to go back to wherever you came from and forget I exist. I want no part of pack politics. I've survived 5 years out here by keeping my head down and staying invisible. The last thing I need is... The king will decide what happens when he wakes. I don't care what the king decides. This is my home. My territory. I didn't invite him here, and I don't want..." Declan moved so fast she didn't see it coming. One moment he was by the bed, the next he was in front of her, close enough that she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. He didn't touch her, but he didn't have to. The threat was implicit in every line of his body. "You saved his life," Declan said quietly. "For that, we owe you a debt. But until the king wakes and releases us from his command, we don't leave. And neither do you." His jaw tightened. "You're under our protection now." It didn't sound like protection. It sounded like a threat. Elara opened her mouth to argue. She'd survived too long on her own to be cowed by posturing warriors, when Finn stepped forward. "Vance." He said the name carefully, watching her face. "You said you were from Silver Creek. Your name is Elara Vance?" "Yes." She frowned at the change in topic. "Why?" Finn's expression went carefully blank. "No reason. I just thought the name sounded familiar." He stepped back before she could question him further, positioning himself near the window where he could watch both her and the door. The suspicion in his eyes had sharpened into something else. Something calculating. Elara didn't have time to think about what that meant. A sound from the bed made her turn, a crack, a pop, the unmistakable noise of bones shifting and reshaping. The black wolf was moving. Not waking, changing. She'd seen wolves shift before. Her packmates, back when she'd still had a pack. It was usually fluid, almost graceful, a ripple of fur becoming skin, of paws becoming hands. This was different. The black wolf's transformation was violent. His spine arched, his limbs lengthened, his massive body convulsed as the wolf gave way to something else. The other warriors stepped back instinctively, giving him room, their faces tight with tension. Elara stood frozen as the fur melted away to reveal skin, golden bronze and marked with scars that matched the ones she'd felt beneath his fur. His shoulders were impossibly broad. His muscles shifted beneath his skin as his body finished its reformation. He was massive in human form too, built like a weapon, every inch of him radiating power. He was also completely naked, but Elara barely registered that. She couldn't look away from his face. Beautiful wasn't the right word. Beautiful implied softness, pleasantness, something easy to look at. This man was beautiful the way a storm was beautiful, overwhelming, dangerous, capable of destroying everything in its path. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, lips that looked carved from stone. And those eyes. Silver. Pure molten silver, just like before. They opened slowly, blinking against the light, and then they found her. The moment their gazes locked, Elara felt it again, that crack in her chest, that impossible warmth spreading through her like fire through dry kindling. His nostrils flared. His pupils dilated. His whole body went rigid, and something like shock washed across those harsh features. He sat up slowly, ignoring the warriors around him, ignoring Declan's urgent questions. His eyes never left her face. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Wrecked. Like the word had been torn out of him against his will. Mate. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Mate. The word hung in the air like smoke, impossible to grasp, impossible to escape. Kael felt the bond roaring through him. 10 years of searching, 10 years of empty beds and political marriages refused, and the growing certainty that he would die before his 30th birthday without ever knowing what it felt like to belong to someone. And now here she was. This woman with herbs stained into her fingers and exhaustion bruising the skin beneath her eyes and a spine made of steel despite the fear he could smell rolling off her in waves. His wolf was howling inside him. Mate. Ours. Finally. Ours. But she was staring at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. I'm sorry. Her voice came out steady, which impressed him. Most people couldn't manage that when he looked at them. I think the poison affected your mind. You should lie back down. My mind is clear. Kael swung his legs over the side of the bed, and 3 of his men immediately moved to assist him. He waved them off. Clearer than it's been in years. You're my mate. I'm not. The bond doesn't lie. Then the bond is wrong. Elara took a step backward, and Kael watched her hand drift toward the counter where a knife lay among her herb-cutting supplies. I'm Wolfless. I can't be anyone's mate. The bond requires 2 wolves to recognize each other, everyone knows that. Whatever you're feeling, it isn't real. Kael stood. The movement sent pain shooting through his muscles. The wolfsbane had done more damage than he'd realized, but he ignored it. He was used to pain. What he wasn't used to was the desperate, clawing need to close the distance between himself and this woman who was looking at him like he was a threat. Which, to be fair, he was. To most people. But not to her. Never to her. My king. Declan's voice was carefully neutral. Perhaps we should give you time to recover before. I'm fine. You nearly died 6 hours ago. And now I'm alive. Kael's eyes never left Elara's face. Because of her. He watched her fingers close around the knife handle. Watched her shift her weight to the balls of her feet, preparing to move. She knew how to fight, or at least how to defend herself. 5 years alone in the Deadlands would teach anyone that. But she was human slow. If he wanted to take her, claim her, mark her as his before she could draw her next breath, he could. His wolf was screaming at him to do exactly that. The bond was a fire in his blood, demanding completion. He stayed exactly where he was. Everyone out. Declan's head snapped toward him. My king. That's an order, Commander. Take the men outside. Give us the cabin. She has a knife. I'm aware. Kael smiled, and it felt strange on his face. He couldn't remember the last time he'd smiled. If she wants to stab me, she's earned the right to try. The warriors exchanged glances, that silent communication that came from years of fighting together. Kael saw the concern in their faces, the protective instinct that made them reluctant to leave their king alone with a stranger. He also saw the moment they recognized the command for what it was, absolute. One by one, they filed out of the small cabin. Declan was last, pausing at the door to give Elara a look that promised consequences if anything happened to his king. Then the door closed, and they were alone. Elara's grip on the knife tightened. "Don't come any closer." "I won't." Kael lowered himself onto the edge of the bed, putting distance between them even though every instinct screamed against it. "I know what you're thinking. You've heard the stories, wolves who claim humans by force, who mark unwilling mates because the bond drives them mad. You're wondering if that's what I am. If that's what I'll do." Her jaw tightened. The thought crossed my mind. I've been called many things. The Blood King. The Butcher of the Northern Territories. Monster. Tyrant. Most of them are true. He held her gaze, letting her see the truth in his eyes. But I have never taken an unwilling woman to my bed. And I won't start with you. Pretty words. True words. He spread his hands, showing her his palms. Empty. Harmless. You have a knife. I'm still weak from the poison. If you wanted to kill me right now, you might actually succeed. And even if you didn't, even if I could stop you, I wouldn't. My wolf chose you. That means I protect you. Even from myself. Elara studied him for a long moment. He could see the calculation in her eyes, the careful weighing of risk and reward. This was a woman who'd survived by trusting nothing and no one, and he was asking her to believe a stranger who'd just claimed her as his mate. Slowly, carefully, she set the knife back on the counter. She didn't move her hand far from it, but she let go. "I can't feel it," she said quietly. "Whatever you're feeling, this bond, I don't feel anything. When I look at you, I see a stranger. A dangerous stranger who's disrupted my life and brought pack politics to my doorstep. That's all." The words shouldn't have hurt. He'd known from the moment he woke that something was wrong. He'd felt the bond slam into him like a physical force, but there had been no answering pull from her side. The connection was one way. Incomplete. It still hurt. "The bond requires a wolf," Kael said slowly, working through the implications. "You don't have one. So you can't feel what I feel. That's what I've been trying to tell you. But the bond chose you anyway. My wolf recognized you. That means," he stopped, shaking his head. "I don't know what that means. It's never happened before. At least not that I've heard of. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe the poison confused your wolf. Wolfsbane doesn't work like that. It weakens. It kills. It doesn't create false bonds. Then maybe I look like someone. A former lover. Your wolf is confused and..." "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "I've never had a mate before. Never felt anything close to this. My wolf has been searching for 10 years, and the moment I opened my eyes and saw your face, he knew. You're ours. Whatever explanation we need to find for why the bond is incomplete, that truth doesn't change." Elara wrapped her arms around herself. The gesture made her look smaller somehow, younger. Vulnerable in a way she'd been hiding behind her sharp tongue and steady hands. "I don't want this," she whispered. "I've built a life out here. It's not much, but it's mine. I don't want a mate. I don't want a king. I don't want anything except to be left alone." Kael felt his heart crack, just a little. "I know. So leave. Take your men and go back to your territories and forget I exist." "I can't. You're the king. You can do whatever you want." "No." He stood slowly, and she tensed but didn't reach for the knife. "Progress, maybe. I can command armies. I can end wars. I can execute traitors and rewrite laws and reshape the world to my will. But I can't walk away from you. My wolf won't allow it. And honestly? He took one step toward her, then stopped himself. Neither will I. Why? The word was almost a plea. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You saved my life. That doesn't mean. And you're my mate. He cut her off gently but firmly. Whether you feel it or not, whether you want it or not, you're the other half of my soul. I've spent 10 years looking for you. I won't force anything. But I won't leave either. Declan was waiting outside, his breath misting in the cold air. The other warriors had spread out around the cabin's perimeter, establishing a defensive position as naturally as breathing. My king. Declan fell into step beside him as Kael walked toward the tree line. His legs were steadier now, the wolfsbane retreating from his system with every hour. Are you certain about this? The woman is my mate. She's wolfless. I know. That's not supposed to be possible. I know. Kael stopped at the edge of the forest, staring into the shadows between the trees. What do you know about the wolfless? Beyond the obvious? Declan was silent for a moment. Most packs kill them at birth. The traditional view is that they're cursed, bad luck, a sign of weakness in the bloodline. Those that survive usually don't live long. They're weaker than humans, not stronger. No enhanced healing. No speed or strength. Most die before they reach adulthood. But she didn't. No. Declan's voice was thoughtful. She said she was banished at 18. That's old for a wolfless to be cast out. Most packs would have done it much sooner. Either her pack was unusually tolerant, or someone protected her. Yes. At least for a while. Kael thought about that. The Silver Creek pack wasn't known for its tolerance. Alpha Victor Vance ran it with an iron fist, traditional values, strict hierarchy, no room for weakness. A wolfless daughter should have been drowned at birth or cast out the moment her condition became apparent. But Elara had lived. She'd survived 18 years in the pack, then 5 more years alone in the most dangerous territory on the continent. That wasn't luck. That was something else. She's lying. Both men turned. Finn had approached silently, his expression carefully blank. Excuse me? Kael's voice went cold. Not about everything. But something's wrong with her story. Finn met his king's gaze steadily. Victor Vance has a daughter named Serena. He offered her to you 3 times at the last gathering as a potential political bride. But I've never heard him mention another daughter. If Elara is who she says she is, why wouldn't he mention her? Shame, maybe. A wolfless child would be an embarrassment to a traditional alpha. Or? Kael pressed. Finn hesitated. Or she's not what she claims to be. Vance has played political games before. What if this is another one? Send a woman to get close to you, have her save your life so you feel obligated. She didn't know who I was. So she says. Kael's wolf surged up with sudden fury, and he had to clench his fists to keep from shifting. The idea that Elara was a plant, a political tool, that the bond burning through him was some elaborate manipulation. No. He refused to believe it. His wolf didn't make mistakes. The bond was real. But Finn's suspicions weren't entirely unreasonable. And Kael hadn't survived 10 years as king by ignoring possible threats just because they were uncomfortable. Watch her, he said quietly. Don't interfere. Don't threaten. But watch. Finn nodded, something satisfied in his expression. Kael turned back toward the cabin, and found Elara standing in the doorway, her face pale with fury. No one protected me. She'd heard. Of course she'd heard. The walls of that cabin were thin, and she was clearly smarter than any of them had given her credit for. Elara. My father threw me out the moment my wolf didn't emerge. No trial, no appeal, no second chance. One day I was his daughter, the next I was trash to be discarded. Her voice shook with anger. I walked into the Deadlands with the clothes on my back and a knife I stole from the kitchen. I survived my first winter by eating bark and sleeping in caves. I built this cabin with my own hands. I taught myself healing because no one else would help me when I was sick. She stepped out into the snow, her bare feet leaving prints in the white powder. No one protected me. I protected myself. And I won't have you and your men standing outside my home suggesting that I'm some kind of spy. Kael looked at her, this fierce, impossible woman who should have died a dozen times over but hadn't. Who had no wolf but more spine than most alphas he'd met. Who was staring down the king of all 5 territories like he was nothing more than an inconvenience. You're right, he said. And I'm sorry. That seemed to throw her. What? I'm sorry. You've given me no reason to doubt you, and I let my men's suspicions color my judgment. He moved toward her slowly, stopping just out of arm's reach. But you have to understand, something about your story doesn't add up. Wolfless children don't survive what you've survived. The odds are impossible. And yet here I am. Yes. His eyes searched her face, looking for answers he couldn't find. Here you are. And I need to understand how. Because my mate is not ordinary. My mate is not weak. And whatever you believe about yourself, Elara Vance, I don't think you're as human as you think you are. That night, Elara dreamed. She hadn't dreamed in years. Not real dreams, anyway, just darkness and exhaustion and the occasional flash of memory from a life she'd tried to forget. But this was different. She was running through a forest. Not as herself. Not on 2 legs with her weak human body. She was running on 4 legs, powerful muscles bunching and releasing, the ground flying beneath her paws. The wind carried 1,000 scents, prey and predator, earth and water, the distant smoke of a fire. She was a wolf. White as fresh snow. She caught a glimpse of herself in a frozen stream and saw golden eyes staring back. Not her eyes. Not any color she recognized. She was beautiful. She was powerful. She was free. A voice echoed through the dream, female and ancient, resonating in her bones. They buried me, but I am not dead. Elara tried to stop running, tried to turn toward the voice, but her body wouldn't obey. The wolf was in control now. Find the truth, little one. Find what he stole from you. Who? Elara tried to ask. What truth? What was stolen? But the voice was fading, and the dream was shifting, turning dark. The forest melted into shadow. The ground beneath her paws became ice, then nothing at all. She was falling through endless darkness, and the voice came one last time, a desperate whisper, a final warning. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. Elara's eyes flew open, and she screamed. The sound tore out of her throat before she could stop it, raw and primal and full of a terror she didn't understand. She was in her cabin, tangled in her blankets, her heart slamming against her ribs like it was trying to escape. The door burst open. Kael filled the frame, his eyes wild with silver light, his body half-shifted, claws extended, fangs visible, his wolf so close to the surface she could almost see it. What happened? He crossed the room in 2 strides, dropping to his knees beside her bed. Elara. Look at me. What happened? She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. The dream was still echoing in her mind, the wolf, the voice, the terrible certainty that something had been taken from her. Something vital. Something alive. Elara. Kael's hands hovered over her shoulders, wanting to touch but not quite daring. You're safe. You're here. Tell me what you saw. A wolf. The words came out broken. I was a wolf. White. With golden eyes. And there was a voice, she choked on a sob. She said they buried her. She said to find the truth. She said to find what he stole. Kael's face went pale, What does that mean? Elara grabbed his wrists, desperate for an anchor. What does any of that mean? He didn't answer. But she saw the recognition in his eyes, the terrible suspicion dawning. He knew. Or at least he suspected. And whatever he was thinking, it scared him. That scared her most of all. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. Kael's hands were still hovering over her shoulders, not quite touching, when Elara's breathing finally started to slow. The cabin felt smaller somehow with him in it. His presence filled the space the way smoke fills a room, impossible to ignore. His warriors crowded the doorway behind him, their eyes sharp with concern, but he didn't turn to acknowledge them. Out, he said. The single word carried enough authority to move mountains. The men retreated. The door closed. Elara realized she was still gripping his wrists. She let go like his skin had burned her, pulling her hands back to her chest where her heart was still hammering against her ribs. I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. It was just a dream. That wasn't just a dream. Kael's voice was quiet, but there was something beneath the calm, a tremor she wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't been looking. Tell me again. Exactly what you saw. Why? What does it matter? Because what you described. He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Just tell me. Elara drew her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them like she could hold herself together through sheer force of will. The dream was already fading, the way dreams do, but the core of it remained burned into her memory. I was running through a forest. Not as myself, as a wolf. White fur. Golden eyes. I saw my reflection in a stream and I didn't recognize myself, but I knew it was me. Or part of me. She shook her head. That doesn't make any sense. I don't have a wolf. What else? A voice. Female. Old, ancient, maybe. She said they buried her, but she wasn't dead. She told me to find the truth. To find what he stole from me. Elara looked up at Kael's face. Who is he? What truth? I don't understand any of this. Kael was silent for a long moment. She watched emotions flicker across his features, recognition, suspicion, something that might have been hope and might have been fear. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I need to tell you something. Something I don't share with anyone outside my inner circle. If you're going to tell me more reasons why I should be terrified of you. Not of me. He sat back on his heels, putting distance between them. Of what's coming for me. And now, maybe, what's coming for you. Elara waited. Kael ran a hand through his dark hair, and for the first time, he looked less like a king and more like a man carrying a weight too heavy for his shoulders. My bloodline is cursed. Has been for 3 generations. He met her eyes, and she saw the truth of it written in those silver depths. A witch cursed my great-grandfather after he killed her daughter. Declared that every alpha king of our line would die before their 30th birthday, unless saved by the willing sacrifice of their true mate. The words hung in the air. Elara felt cold spread through her chest. My grandfather died at 28. Hunting accident, his horse threw him and he broke his neck. My father died at 29. Fever that came from nowhere and burned through him in 3 days. Kael's voice was flat, reciting facts he'd clearly rehearsed many times. They both found their mates. They both felt the bond. But neither was saved. Why not? Because the curse specifies a willing sacrifice. Something precious, given freely, not out of obligation or bond compulsion. His laugh was bitter. My grandmother tried. She loved my grandfather desperately, the bond between them was legendary. She offered everything she had. But the bond compelled her to save him. It wasn't a free choice. The curse didn't accept it. Elara's mind was racing, putting pieces together she didn't want to see. You're 28. Yes. You have less than 2 years. Closer to 18 months, by my calculations. And I'm supposedly your mate. The words came out hollow. But I can't feel the bond. Kael nodded slowly. Which means you can't be compelled by it. Any sacrifice you made would have to come from choice. Real choice. Not wolf instinct. Not bond compulsion. His voice dropped. You're the only mate in 3 generations who could actually break the curse. And you can't even feel that I exist. The irony was so cruel it was almost funny. Almost. Is that why you won't leave? Elara asked. Because you think I'm your chance to survive? No. The word was immediate, fierce. I made peace with dying a long time ago. 18 months from now, 2 years, I've always known my time was limited. I've ruled accordingly. Made sure my territories were stable, my succession plans clear. I never expected to live. Then why? He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes stole her breath. This wasn't the Blood King who'd executed traitors and won impossible wars. This was just a man, stripped bare by truth. Because I never expected to want to live. Not until I opened my eyes and saw your face. He swallowed hard. I've spent 28 years preparing to die young. And in one moment, one look at you, I suddenly understood what I'd be losing. What I've never had. What I never thought I'd want. Kael. I'm not asking you to save me. His voice cracked on the words. I'm not asking you to love me. I know you can't feel what I feel. I know I'm nothing but a stranger who's disrupted your life. But I can't walk away from you, Elara. Not now. Not when I finally understand what living might actually mean. Elara didn't know what to say. She'd spent 5 years alone, building walls around her heart so high she'd thought nothing could breach them. And now this man, this king, was standing in front of those walls with his soul in his hands, offering her something she didn't know how to accept. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. Not of dying. Of dying before you ever really see me. Of spending my last months watching you look at me like I'm a threat when all I want is, he stopped himself. Never mind what I want. It doesn't matter. It matters. The words escaped before she could stop them. Kael's eyes found hers, something fragile flickering in their silver depths. You're a stranger, Elara said slowly. You're dangerous and complicated and you've brought more trouble to my door in one day than I've seen in 5 years. But you're not nothing. And what you want, it matters. She didn't know why she said it. Didn't know why it felt important to say. But something in his expression shifted, softened, and for just a moment, she saw the boy he must have been before the crown and the curse and the blood on his hands. Stay, she heard herself say. Until you've recovered. Until we figure out what my dream meant. Then we'll figure out the rest. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't acceptance. But it was something. Kael nodded slowly. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I still might decide to stab you. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. I'd expect nothing less. Outside the cabin, Finn pulled Declan into the shadows of the tree line, his voice low and urgent. I sent word to Silver Creek. Declan's head snapped toward him. You did what? Before we shifted back. I found a rogue who owed me a debt and sent him with a message. Alpha Victor Vance will know within 2 days that his banished daughter has the king in her cabin. You had no authority to. I had every authority. Finn's jaw tightened. Our king is vulnerable. Poisoned, weakened, claiming a wolfless woman as his mate when the timing couldn't be more suspicious. Victor Vance has been trying to get close to the throne for years. What if this is his play? The woman saved our lives. The woman saved the king's life. That's different. That's political. Declan stared at him, fury building behind his pale eyes. And what happens when Victor receives your message? What happens when he responds? Then we'll know. If he comes to collect her, if he welcomes her back, she's a plant. If he does nothing, Finn shrugged. Then maybe I'm wrong. And if you've just brought an enemy alpha down on us while our king is too weak to fight? Finn's confidence flickered. Victor wouldn't move against the king directly. Not even he's that stupid. You'd better hope you're right. Declan stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. Because if your message gets our king killed, I'll tear your throat out myself. He turned and stalked back toward the cabin, leaving Finn alone in the shadows. What neither of them knew, what no one could have predicted, was that Victor Vance had already been searching for Elara. The moment he'd heard rumors of a wolfless woman living alone in the Deadlands, he'd started mobilizing. Not to trap the king. Not to play political games. To kill his daughter before she could discover what he'd done to her. Finn's message wasn't bringing Victor to them. It was confirming what Victor already suspected: Elara was still alive. And he was already on his way. The fire had burned low by the time Elara finally convinced Kael to leave her cabin and get some rest. He'd argued, of course. Tried to insist that he should stay close in case her nightmares returned. But she'd held firm, and eventually he'd retreated to the small lean-to his men had constructed against the cabin's eastern wall, giving her space she desperately needed. Now she lay in the darkness, listening to the wind whisper against the walls, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. A mate. A curse. A dream about a wolf she'd never been. It was too much. All of it was too much. She turned onto her side, pulling the blankets tighter around her shoulders. Sleep felt impossible now, her mind spinning through questions without answers. Who was the voice in her dream? What had been stolen from her? What truth was she supposed to find? And why did some small, traitorous part of her ache when she thought about Kael dying in 18 months? She didn't know him. She couldn't feel the bond he described. But the way he'd looked at her, the way he'd admitted his terror, the way he'd promised not to force anything. He wasn't what she'd expected. The Blood King was supposed to be a monster. A tyrant who ruled through fear and violence. But the man who'd knelt beside her bed, offering her his truth like a gift he expected to have thrown back in his face. That man wasn't a monster. That man was lonely. And afraid. And desperately hoping for something he'd convinced himself he couldn't have. Stop it, she told herself. You can't afford to feel sorry for him. You can't afford to feel anything. But the ache didn't go away. She was still trying to quiet her thoughts when it happened. A flutter in her chest. Not her heart, something deeper, something stranger. Like a second heartbeat stirring to life behind her ribs. Elara froze. The sensation came again, stronger this time. A pulse of warmth that spread outward from her core, tingling through her blood. For one impossible moment, she felt something brush against her consciousness. Not a voice. Not a thought. Just a presence, faint and distant, like someone calling from very far away. Then it was gone. Elara sat up slowly, pressing her hand to her chest. Her heart was racing now, but beneath it, echoing faintly like a half-remembered song, she could have sworn she felt something else. Something waking up. They buried me, but I am not dead. The voice from her dream. The white wolf with golden eyes. Impossible. She was wolfless. She'd stood in front of her entire pack and nothing had emerged. The elders had examined her, tested her, declared her defective beyond any doubt. But that flutter was real. That presence was real. And for the first time in 23 years, Elara wondered if everything she'd believed about herself was a lie. Her wolf wasn't dead. Her wolf was waking up. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. 3 days changed everything and nothing at all. Kael healed faster than any human could, the wolfsbane poison retreating under the assault of Elara's remedies and his own supernatural constitution. By the second morning, he was walking without support. By the third, he was sparring with his men in the snow-covered clearing behind the cabin, moving with a deadly grace that made Elara's mouth go dry every time she glanced out the window. She told herself she wasn't watching him. She told herself a lot of things those 3 days. It's not real. He's just a stranger. You're just lonely. He's just desperate. But the words rang hollow, even in her own mind. They talked. That was the dangerous part. Somewhere between tending his wounds and sharing meals and the long hours when neither of them could sleep, they'd started talking. About her life in the Deadlands, the remedies she'd developed, the small victories that made survival worthwhile. About his territories, his responsibilities, the weight of a crown he'd never wanted but couldn't set down. He listened when she spoke. Really listened, not the polite attention she'd received from pack members who were just waiting for their turn to talk, but genuine interest that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt since her mother died. And the flickers in her chest grew stronger. Every day, sometimes several times a day, she'd feel that impossible flutter behind her ribs. That second heartbeat that shouldn't exist. She hadn't told Kael about it, hadn't told anyone, but she caught him watching her sometimes with an intensity that made her wonder if he could sense something changing. You need to learn to fight. Elara looked up from the herbs she was grinding on the 4th morning. Kael stood in the cabin doorway, blocking out the weak winter sunlight. I know how to fight. You know how to survive. There's a difference. He stepped inside, and the space immediately felt smaller. What happens if someone gets past your knife? If you're caught without a weapon? Then I run. And if you can't run? She didn't have an answer for that. Kael extended his hand. Come outside. Let me show you a few things. Every instinct told her to refuse. Getting closer to him was dangerous, not because she feared he'd hurt her, but because she was starting to fear that he wouldn't. That she'd keep falling into conversations that lasted until dawn, keep catching herself staring at the way his muscles moved under his shirt, keep feeling that flutter in her chest every time their eyes met. She took his hand anyway. The training started innocently enough. Basic stances. How to distribute her weight. Where to strike when an opponent was larger and stronger, throat, eyes, groin, the soft spot behind the knee. But innocent didn't last. Again. Kael circled behind her, adjusting her elbow position. His fingers were warm against her skin, even through the fabric of her sleeve. You're telegraphing your movements. I can see the punch coming before you throw it. Maybe I want you to see it coming. And maybe you'll be dead before you land it. He moved closer, and she felt the heat of his body against her back. Smaller opponents have to be smarter. Faster. You can't win a fair fight against a wolf, so don't fight fair. Is that what you do? Fight unfair? He was quiet for a moment. I do whatever I have to do to protect my people. Elara turned to face him, and the movement brought them closer than she'd intended. Close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his silver eyes, the fine lines at their corners, the scar that traced along his jaw. Tell me about it, she said. About being king. It's not a pleasant story. I'm not asking for pleasant. I'm asking for true. Kael studied her face, and she watched him decide something. Trust, maybe. Or just exhaustion with carrying secrets alone. They call me the Blood King, he said finally. Did you know that? I've heard the name. I've earned it. He stepped back, creating distance, but his eyes never left hers. I've killed more challengers than any Alpha King in 3 centuries. Executed more traitors. Waged more wars. The things I've done to keep my territories safe, his jaw tightened. I'm not proud of them. Then why did you do them? Because someone had to. The words came out flat, stripped of emotion. When my father died, the territories were on the edge of civil war. 3 alphas were vying for power, alliances were shifting daily, and the outer packs were being raided by rogues who smelled weakness. I was 22 years old, half-trained, and suddenly responsible for 1,000,000 lives. He turned away, staring out at the snow-covered forest. I could have been kind. Merciful. Diplomatic. And everyone I was supposed to protect would have died while I was negotiating. His shoulders rose and fell with a heavy breath. So I became what they needed me to be. A monster who could keep them safe. A king they feared too much to challenge. Elara moved without thinking. Her hand reached out and touched the scar on his arm, one of many, a thick ridge of raised tissue that wrapped around his bicep like a brand. He went completely still. How did you get this one? My first challenge. The Alpha of Northern Ridge. He was twice my age, twice my experience. He thought killing the young king would be easy. Kael's voice was rough. He was wrong. Her fingers traced the length of the scar. She felt him shudder under her touch, felt the tension thrumming through his body like a plucked wire. And this one? She moved to another scar, this one across his shoulder blade, visible through the thin fabric of his shirt. Assassination attempt. 3rd year of my reign. Poison blade. This one? War with the Southern Territories. Took an arrow meant for my second-in-command. Every scar had a story. Every mark was evidence of survival, of sacrifice, of a man who'd thrown himself between danger and the people he was sworn to protect. Monsters don't do this, Elara said quietly. She flattened her palm against his chest, over his heart, feeling it pound beneath her touch. Monsters don't take arrows for their men. Monsters don't ask permission before they touch someone. Kael's hand came up to cover hers. His eyes were burning silver when they met her gaze. You don't know what I am. Maybe I'm starting to. The kiss happened between one heartbeat and the next. She didn't know who moved first, maybe both of them, maybe neither, maybe some force of nature that had been building since the moment their eyes met across a snow-covered clearing. His mouth found hers, and the world narrowed down to sensation. Heat. Pressure. The scrape of his stubble against her chin, the grip of his hands on her waist, the sound he made low in his throat when she opened for him. She'd been kissed before. Quick, fumbling moments with pack boys who'd wanted to experiment with the Alpha's strange daughter. Those kisses had felt like nothing, perfunctory, forgettable, vaguely unpleasant. This was different. This was fire. Kael kissed like a man drowning, and she was his only chance at air. His hands slid up her back, pressing her closer, and she felt that flutter in her chest explode into something stronger. Not just a second heartbeat now, a howl. A surge of something wild and desperate clawing at the inside of her ribs. He pulled back first. His forehead dropped to hers, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His whole body was shaking, she could feel the fine tremors running through him. I won't take anything you don't freely give. The words came out wrecked, barely audible. Even if it kills me. Elara didn't know what to say. Her lips were still tingling, her heart still racing, her entire body still leaning toward him like a flower towards sunlight. Before she could find words, Declan's voice cut through the moment. My king. Sharp. Urgent. We have company. The Silver Creek warriors emerged from the tree line in formation, 12 of them, moving with the disciplined precision of a trained unit. At their center, riding a white horse like something out of a fairy tale, was a woman Elara had hoped never to see again. Serena. Her younger sister was beautiful the way a blade was beautiful, sharp, polished, designed to cut. Dark hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her riding clothes were immaculate despite the journey through the wilderness. She surveyed the scene before her with cool, calculating eyes, and when her gaze landed on Elara, she smiled. It was not a nice smile. Sister. Serena dismounted gracefully, handing her reins to one of her men. I'd heard rumors, but I didn't dare believe them. 5 years in the Deadlands, and still alive. Father will be so pleased. I doubt that. Elara was acutely aware of Kael's men surrounding them, of the tension crackling through the air like lightning before a storm. What are you doing here, Serena? I came to rescue you, of course. Serena's smile widened. When word reached us that you'd been seen in the company of strange men, Father was beside himself with worry. He sent me to ensure you were safe and to extend his apologies for any past misunderstandings. Past misunderstandings. The words tasted like ash. He banished me. Threw me out with nothing and left me to die. A decision he's come to regret. Serena's eyes slid to Kael, and something shifted in her expression. The cool calculation warmed into something hungrier. Your Majesty. What an unexpected honor to find you here. But it wasn't unexpected. Elara could see it in the way Serena carried herself, in the lack of surprise on her beautiful face. She'd known the king was here. She'd come because the king was here. Alpha Vance's daughter. Kael's voice was ice. I wasn't aware he had two. Oh, father doesn't like to talk about Elara. The Wolfless daughter. Such an embarrassment for a traditional pack. Serena's gaze flicked to her sister with something like pity. But I'm here now. To pay proper respects to your Majesty, and to deliver my father's formal offer. What offer? Declan stepped forward, his hand on his sword. Serena turned to address the royal guard, her voice carrying clearly in the cold air. My father has formally offered me as tribute bride to break the king's curse. A sacrifice of bloodline, as the old laws allow. Elara felt the words like a physical blow. Tribute bride. The ancient tradition of offering a powerful bloodline's daughter as mate to a cursed king, hoping her sacrifice would be deemed worthy by the magic. You knew. The accusation came out rough, broken. You knew about the curse. About the bond. You came here to save our king, of course. Serena's smile was poison wrapped in sweetness. Surely you don't think you could break such powerful magic? A wolfless outcast with nothing to offer? The king's mate is not a political position to be negotiated, Kael said coldly. I'll hear no offers of tribute brides. But your Majesty, the old laws. The old laws can burn. He moved to stand beside Elara, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. I've found my mate. The matter is settled. Serena's eyes narrowed. For just a moment, the pretty mask slipped, revealing something ugly beneath. Jealousy. Rage. Calculation. Then the mask was back, and she laughed, a light, musical sound that made Elara's skin crawl. Your mate. Yes, father warned me you might say that. Serena stepped closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a confidence. Did she tell you about her condition? Did she tell you what she is? A wolfless woman cannot be a true mate, your Majesty. Whatever you think you feel, it's a trick. An echo. A malfunction of the bond because her soul is incomplete. That's not, Elara started. Didn't you know, sister? Serena turned to her, and the poisoned sweetness in her smile made Elara's blood run cold. Father always intended one of us to be queen. He just had to make sure it couldn't be you. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her banishment. Her wolflessness. The ceremony where nothing had emerged, where she'd stood humiliated in front of her entire pack while her father watched with cold, satisfied eyes. He just had to make sure it couldn't be you. What did he do? The question came out as a whisper. Serena, what did father do to me? But Serena only smiled, and in that smile, Elara saw the truth she'd been too blind to recognize. Her banishment had never been about her being defective. It had been about making sure she never discovered what she really was. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. What did father do to me? The question tore out of Elara's throat, raw and desperate. She grabbed Serena's arm, fingers digging into the expensive fabric of her riding coat. The Silver Creek warriors shifted forward, but Kael's men moved faster, forming a wall between them. Serena didn't flinch. If anything, her smile widened. You really don't remember, do you? She tilted her head, studying Elara like a specimen under glass. You were so young when father performed the ritual. 7 years old. Still believing in fairy tales and happy endings. What ritual? What are you talking about? Oh, this is delicious. Serena pulled her arm free with a sharp twist, brushing off her sleeve like Elara's touch had soiled it. All these years, you thought you were defective. Broken. Born wrong. And the truth was right there in front of you the whole time. Serena. Kael's voice cut through the air like a blade. If you have something to say, say it plainly. Or I'll have my men extract it from you. Something flickered in Serena's eyes, the first hint of genuine fear. But she masked it quickly, lifting her chin with the arrogance of someone who believed their bloodline made them untouchable. Very well, Your Majesty. Since you insist on the ugly truth. She turned back to Elara, and there was something almost gleeful in her expression. You weren't born wolfless, sister. Your wolf was bound. Suppressed. Buried alive inside you when you were a child. The words didn't make sense. Elara heard them, processed them, but they refused to arrange themselves into meaning. That's impossible. You can't bind a wolf. The elders examined me. The elders saw what Father wanted them to see. What the ritual made them see. Serena's voice dripped with condescension. Do you remember your 7th birthday? The celebration Father threw for you? How special he made you feel. Fragments of memory surfaced. A party. Candles. Her father's hand on her shoulder, unusually warm, unusually attentive. And then, nothing. A gap in her memory like a missing tooth. He drugged me, Elara whispered. He performed the ritual while you slept. A blood witch named Mora, she's been in Father's pocket for decades. Ancient magic, older than the packs themselves. She fed your wolf into dormancy, wrapped it in chains of blood and silence. Serena shrugged. By the time your first shift should have come, there was nothing left to emerge. Just a hollow girl everyone pitied and despised. Elara's legs wouldn't hold her. She sank to her knees in the snow, the cold seeping through her clothes, but she barely felt it. Her entire life, every moment of shame, every whispered insult, every night she'd cried herself to sleep believing she was worthless, had been a lie. Why? The word came out broken. Why would he do that to his own daughter? Serena crouched down, bringing herself to Elara's level. The cruelty in her eyes was almost intimate. Because of the prophecy, of course. A seer came to Silver Creek the night you were born. Serena spoke like she was reciting a bedtime story, her voice light and mocking. Mother always said Father was different after that night. Colder. More afraid. She didn't understand why until years later. What prophecy? Kael demanded. He'd moved closer, his body radiating tension like heat from a fire. The seer looked at little baby Elara, barely an hour old, and spoke 3 truths. Serena held up her fingers, counting them off. First, this child will become the greatest Luna the world has known. Second, she will mate the Alpha King. Third, and this is the important one, she will destroy the man who murdered her mother. The world stopped. Elara heard a roaring in her ears, felt her vision narrow to a single point. Murdered. Her mother. Murdered. My mother died in childbirth. The words came out automatic, reflexive. Words she'd been told her entire life. She died giving birth to me. That's what Father told everyone. What he made everyone believe. Serena's smile was a razor. The truth is so much uglier. Serena. One of the Silver Creek warriors stepped forward, his face pale. Perhaps we shouldn't. Shouldn't what? Tell her the truth she's owed. Serena stood, brushing snow from her knees. Our father is many things, but he's not a coward. He'll want her to know why she has to die. Elara grabbed Serena's wrist before the woman could step back. Tell me. Tell me what happened to my mother. For a moment, just a moment, something almost human flickered in Serena's eyes. Not quite sympathy. Maybe pity, or the ghost of guilt. Then it was gone. Your mother discovered Father was having an affair. With my mother. Serena's voice went flat, reciting facts. She found them together one night, 3 months after you were born. She threatened to expose him to the pack. To reveal that their alpha had betrayed his true mate. True mate. The words hit Elara like a physical blow. Her father and mother had been true mates. Bonded. And he'd still. She gave him until morning to confess publicly. Said she'd stand beside him, support him through the scandal, if he showed genuine remorse. Serena shook her head. Instead, he went to her room that night and strangled her in her sleep. No. He killed his own true mate to hide his sins. Told everyone she'd died from complications of childbirth. He was so convincing in his grief that no one ever questioned it. Serena's lip curled. My mother moved into the Alpha house 6 months later. Father claimed the mate bond had simply faded. That she was his second chance. Elara couldn't breathe. The snow beneath her knees, the cold wind on her face, the distant sounds of men shifting nervously, none of it felt real. She was trapped in a nightmare, drowning in revelations that kept pulling her deeper. The prophecy, she managed. You said I would destroy him. The man who murdered her mother. Yes. Serena crouched down again, her voice dropping to a whisper. Father bound your wolf to make sure the prophecy could never come true. A wolfless girl can't be a Luna. Can't be a true mate. Can't destroy anything. Her eyes glittered. But he didn't count on you surviving the Deadlands. And he definitely didn't count on the Alpha King finding you anyway. She stood, stepping back toward her warriors. Father is coming, Elara. He's been tracking you for months, ever since rumors started that a wolfless woman was living alone in the Deadlands. When he heard the king was here. She shrugged. Well. He couldn't take any chances. He's coming to negotiate? Serena laughed, a bright, brittle sound. Oh, sister. He's coming to finish what he started 23 years ago. He's coming to kill you before your wolf fully wakes. Elara didn't remember standing up. One moment she was on her knees in the snow, the next she was on her feet, her whole body vibrating with something that felt like rage and grief and shock all tangled together. The flutter in her chest had become a roar, her buried wolf slamming against the chains that held her, responding to the truth with fury. She wasn't defective. She wasn't broken. She had been deliberately destroyed by the man who should have protected her. Elara. Kael's voice came from somewhere behind her. His hand touched her shoulder, and she felt his warmth like a brand. Everything I believed about myself was a lie. The words came out hollow. Every moment of shame. Every time I wished I'd never been born because I was such a disappointment. He did that to me. My own father looked at me and decided I was too dangerous to exist, so he broke me instead of killing me. Elara. He killed my mother. She turned to face Kael, and something in her expression made even the Blood King step back. He strangled her in her bed and then spent 23 years pretending to mourn her. And all this time, I've been apologizing for existing. Believing I was the reason she died. Carrying that guilt like a stone around my neck while he... Her voice cracked. Shattered. Kael caught her before she fell. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest, and she let herself break. Sobs tore through her, ugly, gasping sounds that she couldn't control. Everything she'd built, every wall she'd constructed to protect herself, crumbled under the weight of truth. She'd never been unworthy. She'd been stolen from herself. I'll kill him. Kael's voice was ice over fire. I'll burn Silver Creek to the ground and hang Victor Vance from the highest tree in the territory. I'll make him beg for death before I grant it. No. The word came out stronger than Elara expected. She pulled back, meeting his silver eyes. He's mine. Elara. The prophecy said I would destroy him. Not you. She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart pound beneath her touch. He took everything from me. My mother. My wolf. My identity. He doesn't get to die at someone else's hands. He dies at mine. Something shifted in Kael's expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition of a rage that matched his own. Then I'll give you the weapon, he said quietly. And I'll watch him fall. They moved Serena and her warriors to the edge of the clearing, under heavy guard. The woman seemed unconcerned, almost amused, by her captivity. Father won't negotiate for me, she told Declan with a smile. I've served my purpose. I was always just the backup option. Elara couldn't look at her. Couldn't stand to see the face of the sister who'd grown up knowing the truth while Elara suffered in ignorance. The hours crawled by. Kael's men fortified what they could, setting up defensive positions around the cabin, but everyone knew the truth. They were 10 warriors against whatever army Victor was bringing. The odds weren't good. You should leave, Elara told Kael as midnight approached. Take your men and go. This isn't your fight. You're my mate. I'm a political liability. A wolfless woman with a death sentence over her head. She tried to smile. Failed. You have territories to rule. A curse to break. You don't need to die in the Deadlands for someone who can't even feel your bond. Kael crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands cupped her face, tilting it up to meet his gaze. I have spent my entire life preparing to die young. Accepting it. Making peace with it. His thumbs brushed away tears she hadn't realized she was crying. And then I found you. And suddenly dying doesn't feel like fate anymore. It feels like theft. Kael. I'm not leaving. Whatever comes through those trees tonight, I face it beside you. His forehead dropped to hers. You're not alone anymore, Elara. You never have to be alone again. The attack came at midnight. They poured out of the forest like shadows, not just Silver Creek warriors, but rogues. Mercenaries. Dozens of them, moving with the coordination of men who'd been promised payment in blood. And at their center, a woman in a dark cloak, her hands already glowing with sickly green light. Blood witch, Declan spat. They brought a blood witch. The first wave hit Kael's defensive line with brutal force. Steel clashed against steel. Wolves shifted and lunged. The night exploded into chaos. Elara grabbed the knife from her belt, the same knife she'd threatened Kael with days ago, and pressed her back against the cabin wall. She wasn't a warrior. Wasn't a wolf. But she wasn't going to die cowering inside while others fought for her life. The blood witch raised her hands, and green lightning crackled across the battlefield. One of Kael's men screamed and went down, his body convulsing. Mora. Serena's voice rang out from where she was being held. Father sends his regards. The witch turned toward the cabin. Toward Elara. There you are, little one. Her voice was like dead leaves rustling. I bound you once before. Finish the job this time, I think. She raised her hands, and Elara felt something squeeze around her heart. Around the flutter in her chest that had grown stronger every day. The witch was trying to kill her wolf. Trying to snuff out the spark before it could become a flame. But this time, Elara's wolf wasn't sleeping. This time, she was awake enough to fight back. The flutter exploded into a roar. Heat flooded Elara's body, burning, searing, impossible heat that drove her to her knees. She screamed, but it wasn't just pain. It was transformation. It was chains breaking. The last thing she saw before the world went white was Victor Vance stepping out of the trees, his eyes fixed on her with murderous intent. Then darkness took her. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. The snow ran red with blood. Kael fought like the monster they'd named him, all teeth and fury and devastating precision. His wolf had taken over the moment the first rogue breached their line, and now he moved through the enemy ranks like death itself. Declan fought at his flank, and the other 8 warriors formed a defensive circle that contracted and expanded with brutal efficiency. But there were too many. For every rogue that fell, two more seemed to take its place. The blood witch stood at the edge of the battlefield, her hands weaving patterns of sickly green light that sapped strength and slowed reflexes. Every few minutes, another of Kael's men would stumble, weakened by her magic, and the rogues would press their advantage. Serena had disappeared into the trees the moment the fighting started. Her role had never been to fight, only to delay. To distract. To make sure Victor's army arrived before Elara could escape. Elara pressed her back against the cabin wall, her knife clutched in white-knuckled fingers. The chaos of battle swirled around her, snarls and screams and the wet sound of flesh tearing. She was looking for an opening, a chance to help, when a shadow fell across her. "Hello, daughter." Victor Vance stepped out of the darkness like a nightmare-given form. He was older than she remembered, gray threading through his dark hair, lines carved deep around his mouth, but his eyes were the same. Cold. Calculating. Empty of anything resembling love. Father. The word tasted like poison. I'd hoped it wouldn't come to this. He moved closer, and she raised her knife. He didn't even glance at it. When I banished you, I assumed the Deadlands would do my work for me. Wolfless girls don't survive out here. The cold takes them. The rogues take them. Something always takes them. Sorry to disappoint you. You always were stubborn. He circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. Your mother was the same way. That's what made her dangerous. You killed her. Elara's voice cracked. You murdered your own mate. I protected my pack. No remorse. No hesitation. She would have destroyed everything I'd built. My position. My legacy. My future. His eyes flickered to Serena's abandoned position at the edge of the clearing. My daughter. I'm your daughter. You're a threat. The words came out flat and cold. You always were. Even as a child, I could see it. The way your wolf glowed when the seer touched you. White as snow. Pure. Powerful. He shook his head. I should have killed you then. Should have smothered you in your crib and told everyone the birth complications claimed you too. Why didn't you? Something flickered in his eyes. Not guilt, Victor was incapable of guilt, but something close to frustration. Because Mora said the prophecy couldn't be broken by death. If I killed you, someone else would rise to fulfill it. Another white wolf, another Luna, another threat. He stopped circling, facing her directly. But if I bound your wolf, trapped her before she could fully form, the prophecy would have no vessel. You would live, but you would never be what you were meant to be. You broke me to save yourself. I did what was necessary. Just like I'm doing now. He moved faster than she could track. One moment he was 6 feet away, the next his hand was around her throat, lifting her off her feet. The knife fell from her fingers as she clawed at his grip. The binding is failing, Victor said, almost conversationally. Mora warned me it might. Powerful wolves don't stay buried forever. And yours, his grip tightened. Yours has been fighting for 16 years. Elara couldn't breathe. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She kicked, scratched, fought with everything she had, but Victor was an alpha. Supernatural strength. Supernatural speed. She was just a human woman with no wolf and no power and no hope. He slammed her into the snow, his weight pinning her down. Both hands wrapped around her throat now, squeezing the life out of her with methodical patience. The prophecy ends tonight, he said. You die. Your wolf dies with you. And I live to see my real daughter take her rightful place. Elara's vision was going dark. Her lungs burned. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, slower with each passing second. This is it, she thought. This is how I die. Murdered by my own father, just like my mother. Deep in her chest, something stirred. Not the flutter she'd felt before. Not the gentle awakening of a sleeping wolf. This was different. This was fury. This was 16 years of screaming in the dark finally finding a voice. No. The word exploded through her mind, not her voice, but another. Female. Ancient. Enraged. I am not dead. I was never dead. The darkness in Elara's vision turned white. Burning, searing white that consumed everything. And he will pay. Something inside her shattered. Not her body, the chains. The bindings that had wrapped around her wolf for 16 years, squeezing tighter every time she tried to emerge. They broke with a sound like thunder, and suddenly Elara's chest was full of fire. She screamed. Victor reared back, eyes wide with shock as light poured from her skin. Her bones cracked and reformed. Her muscles tore and rebuilt. Every cell in her body was rewriting itself, transforming into something new. Something powerful. The pain was beyond description, agony so absolute it transcended sensation and became something almost holy. She felt her spine lengthen, her jaw reshape, her human form dissolve into something primal and pure. And then it stopped. Elara opened her eyes. The world looked different. Sharper. Every shadow had depth, every sound had texture. She could smell Victor's fear like copper on her tongue. Could hear his heart hammering against his ribs. She looked down at herself and saw white fur. Massive paws. A body that dwarfed any wolf she'd ever seen. Finally, the voice in her head whispered. Finally, we are whole. Victor scrambled backward, his face pale with terror. No. No, that's impossible. More abound you. She said. Elara's wolf spoke for the first time. A growl that started low in her chest and built into something that shook the trees. The sound cut through the battlefield like a blade. Every wolf, rogue and royal alike, froze at the primal command in that voice. You kept me in the dark, her wolf snarled. You starved me. Silenced me. Made her believe she was nothing. She advanced on Victor, and he stumbled, fell, tried to shift into his own wolf form. But Elara was faster. Her jaws closed around his shoulder before his transformation was complete, and she pulled. His scream was music. 16 years, her wolf howled through their shared mind. 16 years of watching her suffer. Watching her cry herself to sleep. Watching her believe she was broken. Another strike. Another scream. She thought she was worthless because of you. She wished she'd never been born because of you. Elara's human consciousness floated somewhere above the carnage, watching her wolf exact the vengeance they were both owed. She knew she should feel something, horror, guilt, mercy. But all she felt was righteous fury. This man had murdered her mother. Stolen her wolf. Destroyed her life. He deserved everything he got. Victor was begging now. Blood poured from a dozen wounds, his body too damaged to heal. Please. Elara. I'm your father. You are nothing. Her wolf struck one final time. Jaws closing around his throat. The same throat that had voiced lies for 23 years. The same throat that had ordered her banishment, her mother's death, her binding. She bit down. The sound Victor made wasn't quite human. It cut off abruptly as her teeth found his spine. Then there was only silence. Elara threw back her head and howled. The sound tore out of her, grief and rage and triumph all wound together into something that transcended language. It echoed off the mountains, rolled across the valleys, reached into every territory where wolves roamed. Every wolf who heard it knew what it meant. A Luna had risen. The most powerful Luna in history had finally awakened. Around the clearing, the battle had stopped. Rogues stared at the massive white wolf standing over Victor's body, their faces slack with shock. Even Kael had frozen mid-strike, his silver eyes fixed on Elara with something like awe. One by one, the rogues began to flee. Whatever Victor had promised them, it wasn't worth facing the creature that had just torn an alpha apart like he was made of paper. The blood which was already gone, Elara could smell her trail leading into the forest, the stench of dark magic fading with distance. Part of her wanted to give chase, to finish what had started here. But her wolf was tired. So tired. 16 years of fighting to survive, and they'd finally won. Rest now, the voice in her mind whispered. We've earned it. The shift back was gentler than the transformation had been. Elara felt her bones compress, her muscles reshape, her fur melt back into skin. When it was over, she was kneeling naked in the snow, Victor's blood cooling on her hands and face. She was shaking. Couldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving nothing but shock and exhaustion and the raw, bleeding wound of everything she'd learned. Then Kael was there. He'd shifted back to human form, and he moved toward her with none of his usual predatory grace. Just a man, crossing the blood-soaked snow to reach the woman he loved. He pulled his cloak from his shoulders and wrapped it around her. The fabric was warm from his body, heavy and soft and smelling of him, pine and smoke and something wild. I've got you, he murmured, pulling her against his chest. I've got you. You're safe. Elara pressed her face into his shoulder and let herself fall apart. She cried for her mother, murdered in her bed by the man who'd sworn to love her. Cried for the wolf who'd been buried alive, screaming in the dark for 16 years. Cried for the little girl who'd grown up believing she was worthless, never knowing she was anything but. Kael held her through all of it. His hand stroked her hair, his voice murmured soft, meaningless words of comfort, and he didn't let go. When the tears finally slowed, Elara lifted her head. And felt it. The bond. It hit her like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, warm and bright and overwhelming. She could feel Kael. Not just his arms around her or his breath on her hair, but him. His relief that she was alive. His awe at what she'd become. His love, so fierce and absolute it stole her breath. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she understood what he'd felt since the moment he'd opened his eyes in her cabin. I feel you, she whispered. I feel everything. Kael's eyes went silver with emotion. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away the tears on her cheek. Welcome back, he said softly. I've been waiting for you. She kissed him. Tasted blood and tears and hope. His arms tightened around her, and for one perfect moment, nothing else existed. Just the two of them, finally whole, finally bonded, finally together. Then Declan's voice cut through the moment. My king. Urgent. Worried. The blood which escaped. She took something with her. I saw her collecting Victor's blood before she fled. Kael's body went rigid. She what? Blood of the prophecy's victim. Declan's face was pale. That's a powerful component. Whatever she's planning. She's not planning anything. Finn stumbled into the clearing, clutching a wound on his side. I caught one of the rogues before he fled. Made him talk. And? Finn's eyes met Kael's. The witch isn't working for Victor. She never was. He thought he was hiring her, but she had her own agenda the whole time. What agenda? She's been searching for the White Wolf for years. Decades, maybe. She needed to confirm the Luna existed before she reported back to her master. Finn swallowed hard. The curse on your bloodline, my king. It wasn't cast by a random witch. It was cast by your grandmother. Queen Isolde. The world seemed to stop. That's impossible, Kael said. My grandmother died before I was born. She didn't die. She disappeared. And according to the rogue, she's been waiting ever since. Finn's voice dropped. Waiting for the White Wolf to emerge. Because apparently, the curse wasn't meant to kill your bloodline. It was meant to make sure only a true mate, a mate strong enough to break it, could save you. Elara felt ice spread through her chest. Why would she do that? Because there's another prophecy. Finn looked at her, then at Kael, his expression grim. One even darker than yours. And your grandmother has been trying to prevent it for 3 generations. In the distance, a wolf howled, not one of theirs. A messenger, carrying news of the white wolf's awakening to someone who'd been waiting a very long time to hear it. The battle was over. But the war was just beginning. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. 1 week later, Elara stood in the grand hall of the royal palace and tried to remember how to breathe. Everything about this place was overwhelming. The vaulted ceilings that stretched toward the heavens. The ancient tapestries depicting wars and coronations and matings that had shaped the 5 territories. The servants who bowed as she passed, the warriors who dipped their heads in respect, the nobles who watched her with curiosity and suspicion and barely concealed hostility. The wolfless girl from the Deadlands had no business being here. But she wasn't wolfless anymore. They fear us, her wolf murmured. Let them. Fear is the beginning of respect. Elara was still getting used to that voice in her head. Her wolf, she'd started thinking of her as Luna, though the ancient spirit had laughed at the simplicity of it, was nothing like what she'd expected. Not a simple beast driven by instinct, but a consciousness as old as the packs themselves. She carried memories of previous lives, previous hosts, Luna stretching back through centuries who had borne her spirit before passing it on. You are not just a wolf, Luna had explained during one of their late-night conversations. You are a guardian. A balance. When the world tips too far toward darkness, we rise to set it right. It was a lot to take in. They're staring again. Kael's voice came from beside her, warm with amusement. He'd appeared at her elbow without a sound, a skill she was beginning to suspect he cultivated deliberately. They've been staring since I arrived. They're trying to figure you out. His hand found the small of her back, a casual possessive touch that sent warmth flooding through their bond. You don't fit any category they understand. Not wolf, not human, not noble, not common. You're something new. Something dangerous, you mean? That too. He smiled, a real smile, not the cold mask he wore for his court. I've made it clear that you're my mate and my future queen. Anyone who disrespects you answers to me. I don't need you to fight my battles. I know. But I want to. His eyes softened. Let me protect you in the small ways, Elara. You've been protecting yourself for so long. You don't have to do it alone anymore. The bond pulsed between them, his love, her gratitude, the growing intimacy that had transformed their relationship from desperate strangers to something deeper. Something real. That night, they lay tangled together in his chambers, the moonlight painting silver patterns across the silk sheets. Their lovemaking had started urgent, hungry, the same desperation that had driven their first kiss. But somewhere in the middle, it had shifted. Slowed. Become less about need and more about connection. He'd touched her like she was precious. She'd kissed him like he was hers. Because he was. Finally, irrevocably, he was hers. I never thought I'd have this, Kael murmured against her hair. His hand traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I spent so long preparing to die that I forgot to imagine what living might look like. And now? Now I can't imagine anything else. He pressed a kiss to her temple. You changed everything, Elara. You changed me. She tilted her head up to look at him. In the dim light, his silver eyes were soft, unguarded. The Blood King was gone. This was just a man, vulnerable and honest and wholly hers. I love you, she said. The words came easily, more easily than she'd expected. I know we haven't known each other long. I know this is all moving fast. But I love you, Kael. My wolf chose you. And so do I. His breath caught. For a moment, he looked almost fragile. I love you too. His voice was rough. I've loved you since I opened my eyes in your cabin and saw the woman who dragged 10 dying wolves through a blizzard because she couldn't bear to leave them. I've loved you through every moment since. He kissed her then, soft and deep, full of promise. And when she pulled him closer, when their bodies joined again, it felt less like passion and more like coming home. 3 days later, the curse came due. Elara was in the library when she heard the crash. She ran without thinking, her wolf surging forward with panicked urgency, and found Kael collapsed on the floor of his study. Black veins spread across his chest. No. She dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against his skin. No, no, no. This wasn't supposed to happen yet. You had months. The Blood Witch. Declan's voice came from the doorway, tight with fear. Her spell during the battle. It must have accelerated the curse. Kael's eyes opened, silver dulled to pewter, clouded with pain. Elara. Don't talk. Save your strength. We'll find a way. There is no way. His hand found hers, grip weak but determined. I've made peace with this. I told you that. I haven't. Tears burned her eyes. I just found you. I can't lose you now. The healers came. They tried everything, herbs, magic, ancient remedies passed down through generations. Nothing worked. The black veins kept spreading, and Kael grew weaker by the hour. By nightfall, he couldn't stand. By midnight, he could barely speak. Elara sat beside his bed, holding his hand, and watched the man she loved dying in front of her. There must be something, she screamed at her wolf. There must be something we can do. Luna was quiet for a long moment. Then, the archives. The truth about the curse. We need to understand what we're fighting. The royal archives held secrets older than the palace itself. Elara tore through them with desperate efficiency, searching for anything about the curse, about Isolde, about prophecies and sacrifices and ways to save a dying king. She found it in a journal hidden behind a false panel, Isolde's own words, written in the years before her disappearance. The seer came to me on the night of my son's birth. She told me what he would become. What his line would become. A tyrant king who would enslave all wolves under brutal rule, drowning the world in blood. I could not let that happen. So I cursed my own blood. My son. His sons. Every alpha king until the line ended. Death before 30, unless saved by willing sacrifice. But the seer spoke a second truth, one I did not understand until years later. Unless the white wolf rises to stand beside him and chooses love over power, sacrifice over safety, him over herself. I thought I was preventing tyranny. I was wrong. I was ensuring that only a true mate could save him. A mate strong enough to balance the darkness. A mate who would choose sacrifice over safety. I was waiting for her. For the white wolf. For you. Elara closed the journal with shaking hands. She understood now. Isolde hadn't been trying to destroy her bloodline. She'd been trying to ensure that only a mate worthy of the king, a mate who could temper his darkness, would be able to save him. And Elara was that mate. You know what we must do, Luna said quietly. Yes. The curse required willing sacrifice. Something precious, given freely. Elara had already lost her wolf once. Had already lived 23 years in the hollow emptiness of that absence. She could survive it again. For him. Kael was barely conscious when she returned to his chambers. His skin had gone gray, the black veins covering half his body. Every breath rattled in his chest. I found a way, she said, kneeling beside his bed. The curse requires sacrifice. Something precious, given freely. His eyes flickered open. No. I can bind my wolf. Transfer the curse to myself. My human body. No. The word came out stronger, almost violent. I won't let you lose her again. Not for me. Not for anything. It's my choice, Kael. Mine. I'd rather die than watch you suffer that emptiness again. Tears leaked from the corners of his eyes. You just found her. After 16 years, you just got her back. I won't take that from you. Elara leaned down and kissed him, soft, gentle, full of all the love she hadn't known she was capable of feeling. You spent 10 years looking for me, she whispered against his lips. I spent 23 years waiting for you. I'm not losing you now. Before he could argue, she pressed her hand to his chest and reached for her wolf. Are you ready? Luna's voice came back calm, certain. I was born for this. We both were. Elara closed her eyes and began the ritual. The pain was immediate and absolute. She felt the curse transfer, a river of darkness flowing from Kael into her, filling her veins with poison. The black lines crawled up her arms, across her chest, wrapping around her heart. Distantly, she heard Kael screaming her name. But she was already somewhere else. Deep inside herself, in the place where Luna dwelled. And her wolf was not surrendering. I will not be bound again. Luna's voice was thunder. Lightning. The fury of 16 years given form. You want to cage me? You want to silence me? I am older than your curse. I am stronger than your darkness. I am the white wolf, and I will not fall. The curse fought back. Elara's body seized, convulsed, burned with fever that should have killed her. She was aware of time passing in fragments, Kael's voice, hands holding her down, cold cloths on her forehead, prayers whispered in the darkness. 3 days. 3 days of war inside her own body while her wolf raged against the curse. On the 4th day, silence fell. Elara opened her eyes. Kael was there, of course he was there, he'd never left, his face haggard, his eyes red from tears he'd refused to shed. Elara? She took a breath. Then another. Her veins were clear. Her chest was light. And deep inside her, Luna settled back into place with a satisfied rumble. We won, her wolf murmured. The curse is broken. Forever. I'm okay. Elara's voice came out rough, amused. We did it. Luna, she fought it. Burned through it with everything she had. Kael made a sound that wasn't quite human. Something between a sob and a laugh. Then he was gathering her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe, and she felt wetness on her shoulder. The Blood King was weeping. Don't ever do that again, he managed. Don't ever. I thought I'd lost you. I thought. I'm here. She wrapped her arms around him, holding him together the way he'd held her. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. 6 months later. The coronation was the largest gathering of wolves in 3 centuries. They came from all 5 territories, alphas and betas and common wolves, nobles and servants and everyone in between. They filled the great courtyard of the palace, spilling out into the streets beyond, all of them there to witness history. Elara stood on the dais in a gown of white and gold, Kael beside her in his ceremonial armor. The crown felt heavy on her head, but her wolf bore the weight with pride. I was told I was nothing. Her voice carried across the crowd, amplified by ancient magic. Defective. Unworthy. Broken. But I was none of those things. I was buried. And if I can rise, so can anyone. She announced her first decree as Luna Queen, a sanctuary in the Deadlands for the Wolfless, the rogues, the abandoned. A second chance for everyone the packs had thrown away. In the crowd, she saw Silver Creek wolves kneeling. The same wolves who had watched her banishment and said nothing. The same wolves who had believed Victor's lies. She didn't want their fear. She wanted something better. She wanted hope. That night, Elara and Kael stood on the palace balcony, watching the sun set over their kingdom. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. Any of it? Elara leaned into him, feeling their bond pulse warm and strong between them. Luna hummed with contentment. I spent 5 years alone in the cold, convinced I was worthless. Then 10 dying wolves collapsed in my path, and everything changed. She looked up at him. I wouldn't change a single moment. Because every moment led me to you. He kissed her, soft, deep, full of promise. My Luna, he murmured against her lips. My mate. My queen. My king, she whispered back. My choice. My home. The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. And somewhere in the Deadlands, in a small cabin that had once sheltered a broken woman and 10 dying wolves, the wind whispered through empty rooms. A beginning. An ending. A love story written in snow and blood and starlight. I know you enjoyed this video. Kindly don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and share this video to family and friends. The end.